talk about a little bit about the Boomers, and because of the system that you've built throughout the years when you started, and I was fortunate enough to start at the same time and watch the progression, where I saw the team grow throughout the years. Like you said early on, when you guys came over, like we had the upper hand, but I could see like the way you were setting up the system, centered around Petty and centered around the players that you had. It was getting more difficult to guard each summer, just because of how natural and how read and react fluent the system ended up being, where you basically had counters to everything. And I was wondering how the progression was of implementing the roles and implementing the system over the course of each summer. And was the system based on the roster, or was the roster based on the system that you wanted to implement? Like which direction did you end up, or like your thoughts and your philosophy implementation with the Boomers?
Yeah, that's another question that I could answer for take 2 hours to answer. So let me get that last bit first, because that's I think a question that happens a lot, right? Is, do you recruit to your philosophy or of how you want to play, or do you fit your philosophy around what you have? And I think the answer is always both, right? So national team, I think it's definitely like the best players are the best players. They're going to make the team. Like, Patty Mills is going to make the team. Andrew Bogut is going to make the team. So in those situations, it is this is what we have. So how do we make that work? Let's put in something that gets the best out of the talent that we have. I think in a club team, it sometimes starts the other way. Like you have again, you are who you are as a coach, and you know what you like and how you like to play, and you try to recruit to that system, but you don't get every piece that you want. Like nobody ever does, unless you got the biggest budget in the league. You don't get everybody that you want, and so all the pieces exactly as you want them to fit. And so once you have your team, then that needs to flip to go, all right, these are the pieces that we have. So now how do we make these bits all fit together? So for me, it's always a combination of both. In terms of the growth of the Boomers and the stuff that we've been talking about just around the building a team, I think for me that's building the culture of a team. That's where it started with me. So in 2013, when I took over as the head coach, so I was fortunate to coach under Brett Brown from 2009 to 2012. I was assistant coach, and I think Brett did an amazing job of starting to bring us into the the professionalism side of it, so to speak. He challenged Basketball Australia around how we support the team, and bring in video analysis and all those sorts of other bits, and looking after the players to give them opportunity to concentrate on playing, so they're not having to wash their own uniforms and things like that. So a great job of just dragging the program up. And then when I took over in 2013, the space where I first put my effort is into developing this culture piece. And so the first thing we did was we got in all the main guys, and at that stage too, with young players, Dante Exum, Ben Simmons, that we saw as the future of the Boomers. We got them all just into a camp in Canberra. We didn't do any basketball. Came in and we just sat down 2-3 days with a facilitator in the room about who do we want to be as a team, how are we going to play, what do we stand for, all these things that we've just been speaking about. But also we spoke to, all right, so if we want to win at that stage we spoke about, we just want to win a medal. What does that take? And it was about, and I was coming from the place of, well, one, we need commitment, because at that stage, Australia, to qualify, we had to beat New Zealand. And most of the time, the NBA guys didn't come back. We did it with the NBL guys, and then we'd see the NBA guys every second year. The World Championships, they'd rock up, and then the Olympics, they'd rock up. And we went through, and statistically, the European teams that were winning these medals at World Championships and Olympics, they were together every single year. And so they're building, and we just see each other every second year. That doesn't work. And then to win the medals, we've got to beat the best European teams. That takes a commitment of time. This is the off season for all the NBA guys. We understand that. We appreciate that you come in and give up your time, but if we're serious about winning, we need to be like, the European teams aren't coming to us. We're on the other side of the world. So we need to be prepared. Again, for you guys to give up time with your families and to go and to sit in Europe for 3 weeks before a tournament and go there and play, play all the leading games and do all our preparation in Europe before we go into a major tournament. And that's where it started. And, I remember clearly that in 2013, where all the players sat there, and at that stage as well, it's not only for the World Cup and the Olympics, it's when we play New Zealand in the qualifying. Like, I need you guys to turn up as well. And they all looked at each other, the main guys, and said, I'm in, are you in, are you in, are you in? And they all committed at that point to, yes, we want to do this. And that for me was a significant point, because whenever, as time goes on and someone's a bit tired and a bit injured and a bit, that's like, okay, but you guys said to win a medal, this is what we needed to do. And it's like, yep, that's right. I'm coming, I'm in. And so I think that was a significant part of that. And that enabled us to get that growth. Like, we took, again, we go play you guys, I think, whatever it was in 2013, Lithuania, the first time, you just absolutely hammer us. And I'm sitting there going, goodness me, we're a long way from these guys, and how the hell are we going to go horns? But those learnings and that continual, like, that time just spent together and away in Europe, and just, so we could, we also put in, calling the team culture guy, like, he came with us and we did sessions around that, how we continue to build as a team and what do we stand for and what are our learnings, but also with that, the offensive and defensive philosophies. And ultimately, I run that flow offense, and in its purest form, it just has basically guidelines, so, but it comes down to read, react, and that's just the time spent together. And again, the players, I think all of that fits together, like, because they trusted each other, they trusted the system, they started to understand that the flexibility within sort of the offense was actually an advantage, because it didn't matter what teams did defensively, and it was hard to scout and all those sorts of things. And then you put them in environment and let them be good basketball players, and that sort of, thankfully evolved over time to being a pretty good group.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest advantage of a flow offense, like you did, like you ran throughout the years, throughout the summers. And like, first of all, like you said, the first point is that everybody was there most of the time. So you naturally, for a flow offense, you need to know each other on and off the court, and then that translates on the court as well. The chemistry is translatable. But so you didn't, per se, with the flow offense, you didn't really care of how other teams, what kind of pick and roll defense they play, what kind of defenses they had. You just, you ran your stuff, and depending on how they guarded, you had counters for basically every situation that the defense was thrown at you.
Yeah. Yes, and not necessarily like scripted down with a video session, this is the counter, or at practice, this is the counter. Like, that evolves over time just by playing the games. And situation happens, and then you go, okay, so this, you play a leading game and someone does blow you up with something, you go, okay, so what are we going to do here? And sometimes the coaches come with an answer, sometimes the players have an answer. And when you talk about, we didn't care how we were defended, like, ultimately we didn't care because, well, one, we can't control how you're going to defend us, right? That's your choice, it's not our choice. We can't dictate to you. Of course, going in the games, you're scouting, saying, well, they show them pick and rolls, or they drop some pick and roll coverage, or, and they turn the top block, these sorts of situations, whatever it is. But that's just a guide. Like, if it goes in the game, it's different. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We don't get stressed by it. It's like, okay, that's cool. Like, suddenly now they're out, blitz and pick and rolls, no problems. We've got an answer for that, or we feel we have an answer for that.
But that's the thing. That's the thing I love about the flow offenses, because, and I keep, and every other podcast, I keep saying that with, and I don't mean to brag or whatever, but it's the fact that when Quinn Snyder was in Moscow with us, we had this flow transition offense that we ran, and it was lots of, because we had very high IQ players that were able to do that, were able to read and react, and we had like a front side and a back side and a transition, and you run different counters to every defense you encounter. If they denied, you go through the big, and yada yada yada. So I feel like that's the biggest advantage, where in Europe you have too much rigid offenses where it's this way and no other way, and you have to absolutely make the defense, or you just have to how you call it? I forgot the English word, where you have to just basically put your offense on top of their defense, no matter how they defend it, and that doesn't work all the time. It just really, you really just stagnate, and you stop ball movement, and you get out of rhythm. So I prefer flow over rigid all the time, and especially during the season, you have all the time in the world. Most of the time, you have more time to implement it and to keep running it, instead of a national team where you basically hope that everybody comes from window to window. But you had a full-time culture guy. Is that something that I misunderstood?
So when we got together with the Windows, when we got together as a group, we started to engage the guy full-time to come with us. Like, he wasn't 12 months of the year, but he traveled with us certainly before we went into Rio. He came with us to Brazil and to Argentina in the lead-ups. He can't get in the Olympic Village, so he didn't hang around for the Olympics. But yes, we engaged him.
Interesting. I would love to talk to him one day, and that would be a really interesting factor, because that's a lot of culture. People take it for granted, like chemistry is supposed to happen out like naturally, but that's I think wishful thinking. I think having somebody who's an expert in culture building and having implement that with actions and with certain, like, again, methodically, it's probably much more effective.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like everything, right? If you spend time on it, you got a chance to make it work. If you how many times do you do pick and roll coverage at practice? Every day.
Yeah.
But culture, we talk about it once at the start. We spend 15 minutes on it at the start of the season, and then here we go. Like, really? Like, you expect somehow that's going to magically work. So if you don't spend time on it, like, you can't really expect it to be effective, in my opinion. And so, yeah, he's good. And so my point there is they invested time in it. And again, I've seen him being most effective, I guess, if he's with you and he's with the team, and then, he's off having a cup of coffee with someone and talking to something, a player about this, or I saw you at practice, you got a little frustrated. What was that about? How would you, how can we make that into a positive, or how can we change that? Or, what would you do? Should you go talk to him? Like, just those conversations around the edges, I think, are really useful. And even, I mean, just a little tip here, something that's, a good starter, and something that, we did in Japan here, because the language barrier and stuff, and I don't have a guy, but just at the start was, so, you get people to sit around, they share experiences, and you put them in groups, and then it's, just a simple question like, so the best teams you've been involved with, like, what are the sorts of things that happen in the best teams? And then the worst teams you've been involved in, like, what experiences have you had? Why do you think those teams are bad? And of course, the best teams are, we got along, and the players, spent time together, and everyone was unselfish. And the worst teams, there was bitching in the locker room. Everybody was unhappy. Everyone played for themselves. Like, all those sorts of things start to come out. And so it's all right. So we list these up on the board, and it's as simple as, well, if you don't know what to do more of this and do less of that. Let's start there.
That's fair. But he's not a team psychologist. He's literally he's a culture expert on building a team culture.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how you can call somebody an expert these days. Like, he doesn't have a degree in it. He's just gone down this path and found that it's been successful for him. And I know he still works with Melbourne United.
Love it.
There's an industry in it, certainly within Australia. There's lots of different people, and I've had different people. I've had different facilitators at different times, and like everything, some are more impactful than others. But the one that we used with the Boomers guy's name is Trent Houghton. He's, for me, the best I've ever seen in this space.
Well, Trent, you will be contacted.